I've always had a goal of not being in debt. I was 51. Ford Motor asked me if I would join the staff at this factory. And she and I talked about it, and we said, let's do it to make sure we are really strongly preparing for retirement. I said, we've got this many years, let's get it ready. As an example of living below your means, as a salaried Ford retiree, I get a nice employee discount if I buy a Ford car. In September, my previous car was 9 years old, just shy of 200,000 miles, and I was thinking, the wisdom might be to replace it as I drive back and forth to Florida. I could have gone into any Ford dealership, driven off with an Explorer, brand new Escape, but I like living below my means. I found a wonderful 4-year-old car with low mileage. Now the advantage to that is I was able just to buy it outright without having any finance payments. So that's one of my goals, to look for those options. Now, that's not to say I haven't bought a new car in my past. I have, but I've kept them all a minimum of 10 years. And I usually put 250,000 miles on them. And then I donate it to another family member that'll drive it for long. These cars will last if you change the oil.
Yeah. Right, amen.
Those of you that like that new car smell, that's the adhesives they use evaporating. So don't fall for that new car smell. So given a choice of two options, you might want to consider, is the cheaper one adequate? I'm less than 5 minutes.
Any questions, comments, moment of dialogue? Anybody would like to chime in?
Yes, sir?
What is the statistic right now, if you buy a brand new car and drive off the lot, go around the block, go back in and try to trade it in?
I have no idea. I've never tried that.
About 40%.
Okay.
So do the math. If you buy a car, it's worth 40% less in less than an hour.
I know in 2000 I did buy a brand new Chevy Metro, a 3-cylinder car. It got 44 miles per gallon every day, every time I filled it up. A whole new set of tires, 4 tires, $160. So here I am, a Ford employee, driving this little 3-cylinder car. But it was efficient. At about 160,000 miles, I gave it to a grandson, and he drove until finally the rear wheel actually fell off. You got to get your money out of these cars.
That's right.
I mean, if I kept it 10 years and you had a 5-year loan, that's like, you cut the loan in half. Also, I found through work, I could borrow money out of my own 401k plan. And then I had to repay it with payroll deduction every paycheck, but the interest went back into my account. Once you get a certain amount of money in your 401, you might find you can be your own banker. Don't get me wrong, you got to pay it back, but the interest goes to you. Anybody else?
Anybody else? Questions, comments? I think this might work in a second.
You know, when I came down here,
Just the piano mic.
I was about a year out of retirement. I bought a motorhome to come down here, and I spent 4 winters in that motorhome. We spent $20,000 on that motorhome. I could have spent $100,000 easy. But again, I like this living below my means. I like going out to the restaurant. I've only got so much money every month, and I really don't like giving it in a big car payment.
All right, so we're at our 5-minute mark, so we're going to go to Sister Newman. Sister Newman is going to speak about credit card debt.
Now, what I have to say is almost totally different than what he had to talk about. Because now remember, he said when we were 51, we started getting things under control. Before that, we were in a mess. We really were. Credit cards were so easy to come by. You got applications everywhere. They were coming all the time. Low interest rates at that time, too. Every store you go into, open a credit card and you get a 20% discount on your purchase today. Okay, fine. I got one. Gas credit cards. Grocery stores giving out these cards. I mean, there was a time we had so many credit cards I could fan them out like a fan. That's how many I had. I should say we. And
I don't remember that.
my sister has a picture to prove it, but I don't want to see it anymore. But we were making them minimum payments every month. I could make the payments, so okay. And I had little kids at the time. Yeah, they needed shoes. Yeah, they needed clothes. Oh, I thought I'd like to get this for them. And I could get that for them. Oh, I can make the payment this month. But after a while, I got to realizing the minimum payment wasn't getting it. It seemed like the balance kept growing and growing on all of them. And I finally come to the conclusion, something has to be done. Well, interest rates kept going up too. At one time, for us back then, it was all the way up to a 16% interest. Now it's even up to 20, 30%. It's crazy now. But back then, 16% was really high. I got this application in the mail for another credit card. And at the time, all my other credit cards had gone up to 14 and 16%. And they said, if I could transfer all my balances to this one credit card for 11% interest, it will never go up as long as I keep making my payment every month. And I thought, okay, so I sat down and I figured it out. I totaled up all my minimum payments on what I was paying as opposed to what I was going to be paying to this one card. And I was saving us $150 a month by combining it all. I did keep one card out that was at a zero balance if we needed it for emergencies. I did transfer everything. Yes, it was very hard to make that big payment plus a little more because I wanted to get the principal down. It took me many years to get that paid down. But I still remember the day I sent in that last payment. I was thrilled because I no longer have all this debt. But it's so easy to get caught up in all this credit card business. It is so easy. They make it sound so good and so easy, and it's just, you just can't keep piling it on. And it comes to a point where you have to be paying more than the minimum balance, because if you don't, you'll never get it paid off before you die, generally. Because it is very difficult, especially, I mean, it got to the point where, I mean, one card I had $10,000 on it. Another card had $5,000. I mean, and it runs up so quickly. And you don't really realize how much you're using this card until it finally hits you in the face, and that's what it did. And we tried one time to do, I listed all of them, and then I would pay extra on the smallest balance until it was paid off. And what that minimum payment was, I took it and applied it to the next one. That was working, but it was working awfully slowly. And I figured by doing it the other way, I did a lot of figuring to get this down to where we could save a little bit of money. And it worked out by transferring it all to one card. And now we have one card, and that's the only one we do use, and we pay it off every month. So that there isn't even a running balance at all. And if you could do that, that's the best way to do it.
Have about a minute left. Any questions, comments? Think about credit card debt. You want to jump in? Any confessions? Mother may I's?
You got any credit cards available?
One or two. 0% for 18 months.
Hallelujah.
That's what I mean. a hook. They've got their hooks that they can get into you to get that card. And then it's so easy to use it.
It is.
Anywhere, any place.
I don't have a question, I have a comment. We actually use a credit card that gives us cash back on everything.
Yes.
So that we get a nice check at the end of the year. So I'd recommend doing something like that too. A lot of the credit cards have rewards, whether it's, miles on airplanes or, cash back or something like that for us to apply. So we have a cash back card and that's, it's a good incentive.
Yes, our card right now has that as well. We get a certain amount, 2%, 3% back, depending on what we're purchasing at the time.
Right.
And that is the best way to go.
As long as you pay the credit card off at the end of
Pay
the
it off
month.
every
You gotta pay it off every month.
Then you're
That
defeating the
part.
purpose of the cash back.
Right.
And it doesn't have an annual fee. As long as it doesn't have an annual fee,
Right.
just cash back, pay it off at the end of the month. All right, we better move to the next subject then. So we're gonna talk to Sister Peggy, talk about real estate.
Okay.
Tell your success story. Basically, that's what they need to hear. How do they duplicate what you and Brother Ken did?
Okay, well, when me and Kenny first started out, he had a farm and he had a concrete pouring business, and I had a dairy bar. So we kind of pooled those together, and one day he told me he was gonna retire. And I said, not without me. So I sold the dairy bar, and we took that money, and his money too. He had bought a home in Florida for the winter. And so we pulled all that, and that's how we got started in buying real estate down here. And we had a home up in Indiana too. And then once we had enough equity in our home, well, when I sold the dairy bar, I took all of that money and put it in nothing but real estate and a new car that I drove for 14 years. And so once we sold the house in Indiana and one of them here in Florida and built our new home on the lake. Well, at that point, we were debt-free. We owed nobody nothing, which was an awesome feeling, which we're there again today. It just took us 20 years to get back there. But investing in the real estate is where we really made our money. And I have enough, we had enough at the end when we sold everything, that if I run out of money before I die, I need my head examined. And that's how we've been able to bless people, because the more we bless, the more God blesses us. He's brought us a mighty long way. And like I said, when we were working at the dairy bar and this concrete, we were dog-tired all the time. And I'm saying that even with the real estate, because we did most of the work. We hired very little help on fixing them up. And then when Kenny got to where he couldn't do that work, that's when we started selling off. But we banked that money for our retirement. That was our whole goal to start, was that when either one of us went, the other one could live. And then when I go, whatever's left, the kids get. But then we had 10 kids, so I mean, you're gonna have to have a lot of money to get 10 kids. But they're all doing good, and all his boys are in concrete too. So we brought them up in good standards, and we don't do credit card debt. I always said, if you live within your means, you don't need that credit card. You need one for emergencies, but anytime. And I have more than one, but I don't use them. If I charge it, if I get a discount for using it, I'll use it. But I stand right there and pay the bill, right? I don't even let the bill come in the mail. Because you live within your means. And that's how, after, there was probably 15 years that we did have some debt, but because we were buying real estate. But it was low interest. When we first come to Florida, we were buying houses for $20,000-$30,000. You can't buy one now.
Mm.
But we hit the market perfect when we come here. And then when we started selling, things were up. So. But,
So we do
and
have
there's-
about a
There's
minute.
there's times that you get a bad house, but you still gotta stick with it, because you gotta keep your credit up.
So let's open that up for question and answer. Any questions or comments about real estate? Anything she might have shared?
Did you find that a certain real estate did better than the other?
Well, on the houses.
Yeah, which did better? What kind of real, like mobile home, concrete block, land?
We had a mixture of homes and mobile homes. The mobile homes were cheaper, of course, they were cheaper.
How
But-
many homes did you have at the height?
At one time, we had 30
30 homes.
trailers and houses.
Do you have a college education?
8th grade education. I quit in the 8th grade.
So it didn't take college, it didn't take a trade school, it just took dedication, hard work.
Yes,
Anybody can do it, can't they?
yes. If I can do it, anybody can.
Amen.
Yeah, but we rented a lot of them too. Because that made that monthly income to pay the debt after because eventually we got equity line of credit in our home that was paid for. And just kept, at one time we had some debt.
And dealing with all those renters, it kept you in the altar,
Oh,
so you kept
Lord.
a great relationship.
The Lord helped us a lot. But we did have good ones too, really, seriously.
We better move to our next subject. Sister Peggy's going to talk to us about insurance, the dynamic that was tonight. Carried away. Becky, I'm sorry. Peggy 1, Peggy 2, Sister Peggy.
My husband and I this year will have been married 47 years.
Thank
For
you,
the
Lord.
first 20 years, we did a lot of arguing and a lot of not planning our money very well. And then about 20 so years ago, we took the financial peace study with Dave Ramsey, and it was tough, but it got us communicating because we had to talk about the things from week to week. So we communicated better, and praise God, we're still communicating better. But one of the evenings that he talked about insurance, and you can be insurance broke. But one thing that he recommended was long-term care. And so we got to looking into it a little more, because down the road, if one of us would get sick, our savings could be gone because of the expense of all of that. So at that time, I worked for a bank, and that year, one of the perks they added was long-term care. So I said to my husband, I think somebody's trying to tell us we ought to look at this. So we looked into it. We were able to get a very good policy. But one thing that Dave Ramsey stressed was the younger you start, the cheaper it is. Now, we started in our 40s, so we have a pretty high annual cost. But it's definitely worth it. We have like $300,000 of coverage, and a couple years, I think, in home health care and all of that. So it's something, it's not fun to think about, but it's coming. So.
That's exactly right. Any questions, comments for Sister Becky about long-term care? Because I have to confess, that was probably one of the last things that I learned about as well, most recent, is the benefit of that long-term care insurance policy. It is different than long-term disability. So long-term disability, is essentially replacement compensation for your wage that's lost due to an injury. Where long-term insurance care is simply, you say good morning enough times that you no longer can care for yourself and you're put in assisted living or a nursing home, something like that. And then this policy kicks in to help pay for those expenses.
And they also make allowances in that it makes it easier and less expensive for you to get in-home care. So you don't have to leave your home if you're not terribly sick, but yet you're well cared for and you don't have to worry about that.
Sister Becky, we got a little bit of time, so I'd like to chime in because we were kind of latecomers to that whole subject too. But one of the things when I got out of active duty military, the Armed Forces Benefit Association had life insurance. And so I thought, man, I'll get this life insurance policy, as a young guy, and cover my family. To this day, we still have that. It's called AFBA, Armed Forces Benefit Association. We still have that policy. I look back on it now and wish I'd have bought that policy. Because if I'd have bought that long-term care policy instead of that life insurance policy, I'd be in a whole lot better shape now. Just something to think about, because I had never heard of that. I'm not even sure if they offer it back then.
We just heard about it, like I said, through the bank, and that was 20 years ago. So I don't think it was around that long before that.
Sorry.
I was just going to share that several things that Medicare will cover long-term care, but essentially it does not. It only covers a small portion, and in your beginning of your care, and you need something else to kick in beyond that.
Any others? Got a few questions, comments?
Yeah, right.
You're ready to run out and buy long-term care policy? All right, just-
What happens if you get to a certain age and you decide you don't think you're gonna need it, you cash out, and you get paid up?
Sister Becky,
It depends on the policy that you have.
you want to repeat the question in the mic, Sister Becky, and then answer it?
She's asking if you get to a point where you maybe think you're not going to need it, can you cash out of it? It depends on the policy that you have. So I would recommend you find a good financial planner that can recommend and help you find a good policy to get that. I'm not sure it would be a good idea to do that unless you know for sure that you're going to pass away today. You're never going to need that money to take care of you. But well, 3 years is a long time, so you might need it. She said she thought if you're 95, you might not need it, but
You might. So we'll go ahead and jump to Sister Haley then. Sister Haley's going to speak to us about budgeting finances.
I don't know how I got roped into this. I guess it's because people with purpose got so much money, they don't need a budget. Excuse me. If I could get a volunteer to help me pass out some handouts, I got some.
But Danny will. Oh, sorry, but Corey,
Y'all can split it half and half. See, I put pretty stuff to make up for my lack of what I have to say, capture attention with that. So we're gonna talk a little bit about budgeting. The handout you're gonna get is what's called an every dollar budget. It is out of a Dave Ramsey product. We're not, not endorsing Dave Ramsey, but I do listen to it. So with budgeting, what I've come across here recently is several people saying that they don't need to create a hardcore budget because they know how much money they have coming in and they know how much their bills are. So they don't need to create a budget. They just watch their bank account and they know when they still have money left. They don't need to make a budget. They know they have enough to cover, which kind of makes me chuckle because your spending should not dictate how much money you have in the bank. Your bank account should dictate how much spending you're doing. So that's kind of living a little too much on the edge for my taste. So with budgeting, just because you can afford something doesn't mean it's the wisest thing. So this is where we're going to talk a little bit about the ideal breakdown of percentages for your expenses compared to your income. So what this wheel suggests is that 100% of your income should be going to something. And with a good budget, we learned about in our Wednesday night budgeting class we took, is every single dollar should be accounted for when you do your budget. If you pay all your bills and you have $300 left over at the end of the month, you don't just leave that $300 hanging out there, because then you don't really know where it's going. It's not just a free-for-all. You should know where every single dollar you have is going. So if you have extra at the end of the month, give that money a name and a place where it's going to go to. It's going to go to Haley's Shoe Fund, or it's going to go to my restaurant budget. Like, give it a name so you know where it's going to go. Now, your budget may not always go as planned, but at least you have a plan that you are shooting for. It is an estimate. So 100% of your income ideally is broken down to 25 to 30. I think we can all agree that that's probably the most important expense you have, is a roof over your head. Some financial experts talk about the 4 walls of your budget should be your absolute needs and necessities: your housing, your transportation, your food. I forgot what the other one was. I think it's your utilities, something like that. So 25 to 35% of your income should be devoted to your housing, 5 to 10% for your utilities, 10 to 15% for food. That's groceries and restaurants. 10 to 15% for transportation. That's your car payment and your gas and your auto insurance. Anything, any maintenance that's going to go into your car, all should fall between that 10 to 15%. 5 to 10% for health. That's your health insurance, any other, health-related expenses you might have. 10 to 25% for insurance. They usually don't put auto insurance into that category. That's usually just your homeowner's insurance and life insurance, yeah, everything like that. Your long care health insurance would go into that as well, probably. 10 to 15% for personal. That's your fun money, your entertainment, actually recreation is your fun money. Personal would be like your clothes, your just random purchases you might make. Yeah, your shoes, your Starbucks coffee. 5 to 10% to recreation, which is your fun money. You're going, bowling with the kids. You're going to Legoland on the weekend. 10 to 15% for savings. And the reason it's 10 to 15 is we all know 10% goes straight into savings. 5%, you break it up depending on whether you want to do it in investments or straight up savings account, but it's still labeled as savings. And then 10 to 15% for giving. 10% is that tithe, and that extra 5% is your offering. So you break it up. All of those percentages make up 100% of your income. So just because you can afford something doesn't mean you should. So if you're like me and your transportation is 35% of your income, it's probably not sustainable long term. So even though I can make the payment now, that car is not going to be in my future for long term when other expenses come in. So that's the reason, the logic behind the percentage breakdown is to make your whole budget more cohesive and easier to do all around. So when I first started making a budget, I kind of was along the same line. I'm over my time already.
It's okay. How about question and answers?
Yeah, so we're forgetting question and answers.
Anybody questions, comments about budgeting? Think about budgeting. Everybody love it? You just can't wait to go home and create a budget? You have a question?
Yeah. Where do you put this 10%, 20%, all that? Do you keep it just in one big lump sum in the checking account or savings account? Or and you just have something you write down, okay, this is how much out of this lump sum, it's got to be for this. And
So repeat the question. They probably couldn't hear it. Then answer.
Sister Newman asked, so how do you basically label that 10 to 15% of your income on what it is for? So Sister Tina, if you'll throw up that budget slide, we have a sample budget. This is going to be a bit of an eye strain. I personally don't use a manual budget like this. I use the Every Dollar Budgeting app, which is an app you put on your phone. Okay. And within that app or on your written budget, if you want to write it out, you actually label the amount of how much it is. So I know exactly how much my car payment is. I know exactly how much gas I spend each month by looking at previous month's purchases. Within my budgeting app, I put in every single check I know I'm gonna receive as income for the month. And then for every single expense, I label it with an amount I know it's gonna cost me. Some you know for sure, some you have to estimate. You know how much your water bill is gonna be roughly and your gas payment and things like that. So you give it an amount, and then every time I swipe my card for a purchase, or if I'm paying a bill, I go back into my app, or if you're gonna do it on a written budget, go back into your budget and actually deduct that out. So for my line item in my budget that says gas, if it says total $150 a month, if I go gas up this week and it's $60, I go into my budget and I deduct $60 from that total budget of $150. And I check that thing multiple times during the week, so I know how much I have left in that budget. And when it hits zero, I don't buy no more gas. I make Jeff drive.
We always have extra money in your gas budget.
So basically, making sure you know where it's going, how much you have to give out of that fund, and if it does go to zero, sometimes I've taken money out of my food budget and putting it into the gas budget. You take from somewhere else that you may not need it. And food is a huge thing. I didn't realize how much I was spending in restaurants because my account, never went to zero, so I could afford it. But when I actually budgeted out and I spent $1,000 in 1 month in restaurants, just myself, not feeding a family, you're like, oh, that could have been better saved somewhere else. So you think you know where it's going until you actually pinpoint it all down. It's called Every Dollar. It's a Dave Ramsey product, a little green app.
Is it free? Yeah.
It is free. There is a paid premium version, and basically its best feature for the premium is it automatically links to your bank account. So every time you make a purchase, it automatically puts it in your budget instead of you having to manually enter it in. But the regular is free. Any other questions? Huh? Every dollar. It's at the bottom of this handout. You see it at the bottom? It says every dollar. There you go. Yeah, sorry. It's also on the top. Yeah, top and bottom. Every dollar. And
A lot of interest in this one. Any other questions? Yes.
From a ministerial standpoint, I can't believe that we got giving and tithing last.
Right.
My bad.
But it is actually top dead center
It is.
first.
What's going clockwise?
It's one of those first shall be last things.
Yes, always do that first. It is first.
So one thing I like to insert, over my working career, I've traveled around, and I've seen people who had less money than we had, but I've seen an enormous amount of people who had more money than we had. And I would look around and I'm like, how do they afford all this stuff? Where does this money come from? I learned most of them are drug dealers. No, all kidding aside, but through finance, something I learned, it doesn't matter if you're a country music star who has homes all over the United States. It doesn't matter if you're a movie star, an athlete. Everybody lives in percentages. So even if they're making $50 million a year, some sports contract, their financial advisor is going to tell them, you can't spend more than 25 to 35% of your $50 million on housing. You know what I mean? So when we think about that, we want to compare ourselves to people who have bigger houses and nicer cars and go, well, hey, I want that. Well, they're living in their percentage as well. So it doesn't matter where you're at, based on the income level. Everybody, if they live within their percentages, will live a whole life being able to pay their bills, save for the future, and have financial security in retirement. All right, anybody else? Questions, comments, statements before we move to the next subject? That was a lot of interest in that one. Okay, all right, let's move to Sister Wagner. Sister Wagner?
Last?
Well, you can be if you want to be. Want to be? Okay, Sister Norton. All right, Sister Norton's going to speak about real estate as well.
Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
I just want us to say a scripture. The Lord said He's never seen the righteous forsaken, or a seed have to beg for bread. So there's no reason any of us. Oh, there's no reason why any of us should have to be standing on the corner. I will work for food and all of that. The righteous never, the word of God says it, forsaken or receive, have to beg for bread. Brother Norton and I, my husband worked over 31 years at Buick. He did a little everything there. And I was mostly a stay-at-home mom. But my husband has a gift. He just did. If he knew what to do to get extra into our home, what he and I did was, we did real estate. One of our houses we built in Michigan, we bought a piece of property and we sold that house. We knew we was only gonna live there a couple of years. We had 3 kids. We knew we was only gonna be there a certain amount of time. My husband is an awesome decorator and an awesome painter. Seriously, he really is. So the minute anyone comes into this house, they see this house, they're like, oh, okay. So, and as everyone knows, it's all about location. Nobody wants to live in a place where you pray, you try to go to sleep, and there's stuff going around, noise and whatever. So it's all about location. So what he did was, we bought a piece of property from a friend, a big piece of property. We built that house. We knew we was only gonna live in that house for 2 years. Decorated it, made it look nice. All of the little extras they asked, did we want when we built the house? My husband said yes. Went to the house, lived in the house for a couple of years, did a couple other little things in the house, and we put the house up for sale. That house was on the cover of Real Estate twice, because this is the Lord, really. It really is. And so we sold that house, we made money, and we kept moving. My husband has moved us almost 10 times. Almost 10 times. But every time we did it, our kids did it, it's like twice. No, it was more than that. Every time we did it, you guys, we always made sure that it was in the right area. We was gonna be able to get something from this house. And that's what he did. And then we lived in Michigan. Had only been to Florida a few times. Went to Tallahassee. He bought another piece of property. Beautiful house. We went in the house, examined the house, left the house was sold. Because we built the house to sell the house. You have to try to remember, at least we do, you know, we try to stay with like basic colors, things that we pretty much know people are gonna like, the neighborhood, things like that, where the schools are at, all kinds of things. Matter of fact, my husband and I, we sold our house in Michigan. It was a cute little house. It was my daycare. He sold it. The person, it was a cash offer, we took it. So now when we go back to Michigan, we're getting ready to go maybe in June, maybe, you know, so, but we're working on it right now. We could live with our kids, I guess, but we'd rather have our own. I just want to tell anybody, you know, as long as you're in the Lord, God is going to take care of you, no matter what.
Amen.
We rely on the Lord. Plus, we had fun doing it. And yes, we made money off of those houses. And we were blessed. You have to have some money to make some money. You know, we try not to really do the bank thing unless we have to. We've had to do it. We've had our high times with renters and people, and we've had our low times. But God has always sustained us. He's always been there. I said, Lord, we can't do nothing without you.
Hang on, before you
Any
leave.
questions?
Yes. Questions?
I was just gonna ask, you said you built homes and you knew that when you were building it, you would know you were going to flip that house or to resell that house.
Yeah, we knew we was gonna sell it. That's mainly why we built it.
Did you think it was better to like buy a house to remodel the flip, or was it, you know, better to build it, you know, I guess it would be a new house, it would be a new house.
It was a new house, and then we bought houses that were older too. Brother Norton and I, we went in there, several of them, and we gutted them out so the way I could put it. Carpet, flooring, lighting, whatever you could think of, we did it. Matter of fact, you guys, the house we're living over my times. I don't know. The house we're living in now, Brother Norton and I, we bought a modular. We bought a modular home, a manufactured home, our first one. Wow, it was big. It's still big. It's a big house. were like 4 bedrooms and all of this, and sunrooms and all of this. We went into the house. She said the house sat up for 3 years, but the Lord knew what we needed. He knew what we needed. And so what we did is we left our other house, sold that house like in 2 days. And the house that we built, we didn't build it, we bought that house in Lake Region. Brother Norton added a pool to that house, and that house was gone like that. So we found this modular that needed everything. And the lady at the office, she said, this house stood up for 3 years. 3 years. And she said, now that you guys want to buy it, it's like everybody wants to buy this house. We went into that house. Brother Norton did. We did everything. We did flooring, we did painting, we did lighting, fan, AC, roofing. Think of it. We put money into it. So now we might continue to live there maybe a couple of more years. The house is done now. And most likely, we're going to sell it. And we want to make sure we get a profit. That's what it's about, to get a profit. So we've never been hungry. Our bills have always been paid. You know, we don't have a lot of money, but God has tremendously blessed us in so many ways. So, yes.
How do you go about building a house, having your house built?
Oh, what did we do? We did. He brought the property from our friend, and they were building in that area. It was a big land development thing. So what we did was we knew the neighbor, and we asked him, because he had a huge yard. We like, can we have that other part up there? He said, yeah. Brother Norton got a good deal on it, so we took it, and we got with the builder. And he came to our house and showed us the flooring and this and that and all this stuff, and we built it. And we kept going over there to make sure they was doing their job, because they'll take your money and put some cheap stuff up in there, and so he had to keep going over there to make sure he was doing the job. Any other questions?
Did you guys finance to build it, or?
He had some, how did we do that? He asked, did we finance it, or did we have the money already to take care of it? With Mary Whetstone, remember? I don't remember.
Yeah, somehow we finance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We did cash in some houses, and some houses, yes, we did finance. But all that was paid off once we sold that house. Tried not to, too much debt.
That's exactly right. All right, so we'll probably jump to Brother Jeffrey there. Brother Jeffrey's going to speak about amortization schedules.
So I feel like I got the short straw.
He's talking about debt.
I get to talk about debt and the stuff that don't help you, and it almost feels counterintuitive because I talk about this in the opposite direction most parts of the day. Hey, I'll give you a loan instead of you need to repay your loan. I mean, sometimes I tell folks they need to repay their loan, and that conversation doesn't go well either. So, but amortization, it's kind of one of those things that those schedules have gone by the wayside. If you ask a bank for an amortization schedule now, they can't provide you one. Like, we actually go out to Google and pull up an amortization schedule for folks. It's not provided in your loan packets anymore. Now, we are required under Truth in Lending. There's certain regulatory requirements that the bank has to meet in order to be a lender. And on most loans, you have to include the finance charge that's there. And if you're paying too close attention to that when you sign your closing documents, you'll back out of the loan because you realize, what's this really big number over here, because that's not what I'm financing. That's the total amount that you end up paying for that loan. And it's scary when you look at that number. And we always hope and pray and hopefully budget for the fact that we can pay that thing off early, because otherwise you're going to be stuck with that nice big finance charge when it's paid off. Really all, you know how you talk about compounding interest when you invest in something and you put your money into a 401k and you get an average return of 7, 8, 9%, whatever it is. Amortization is the reverse of that. So it's the interest that you are paying on that principal balance through the life of the loan. So I did pull an amortization schedule for everybody, and I used some numbers that we probably would recognize 5 years ago. It's not numbers that we would recognize today, and I just wanted to kind of give you a little comparison. So, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, you could get a fairly decent loan for 3%, you know, on a 30-year fixed rate, fixed term mortgage, and you are made in the shade, you know, a house, a fairly decent house, $180,000 5 years ago, you know, in that same time period that you could get a 3% loan. So for instance, on that, if you had a $180,000 balance at 3%, your monthly payment was $758.89. $758.89. Now, on your amortization, you pay more interest up front on the loan. Your interest is all at the front part of that. Now, as you begin to get closer to your 30th year of that payment, more and more of your monthly payment starts going toward the principal balance that's there. So, for instance, in payment number 1 on your amortization schedule, $758, let's just say the payment, $450 is going to interest on the front part of that, and your principal is being reduced by just under $310.
Right.
Now, you know, fast forward 30 years, and then that final number comes to, what is your final payment here? It's on the back. Your last payment, $756.99 goes to principal, and $1.89 goes to interest. So let's fast forward a little bit. That same dollar amount, which you ain't going to get a house for $180,000 right now, or you might find a good deal on something. $180,000 balance at 7.5%. And if we're talking a manufactured home, you know, manufactured homes go for $180,000, you know, somewhere in that range now, which is crazy to me. You know, it's wild, but the going rate is somewhere around 8% for that. You don't get a 30-year loan on a manufactured home, by the way, typically, but your monthly payment, instead of being $758 a month, jumps to $1258 a month. So just because your rate went up 4.5% on that, you're immediately through the roof on your payment. And with payment number 1, $133 goes to principal, and then $1,125 goes to interest on that payment. So let's fast forward real quick, because I know I'm running out of time, to where we live right now. We're an average home, and I say average home, I'm talking 3-bedroom, 2-bath, you know, maybe a 2-car garage in a semi-decent neighborhood, maybe it's new construction, $330,000 in this area. That's crazy to me. A decent rate on a stick-built or block home, 6.5%, somewhere in that range. Your monthly payment is $2,086, and over the life of the loan, you pay $420,000 in interest.
Right.
In interest. That's it. You finance $330,000, but you paid $420,000 in interest. It's mind-blowing. Now, there are a couple things that you could do on that. One extra payment a year on your home can reduce the total mortgage length by 5 years. So, you know, if you file your taxes and you get a return and you get enough back that you can make an additional principal payment, or, you know, you've maintained your budget and you've got a little bit left in the savings at the end of the year, throw an extra principal payment to that, because what it does is it brings down the principal on the loan, and the interest is billed based on the overall principal balance that's there. So if you bring that principal balance down, it's really going to help you over the life of that.
Can you make additional specific principal payments every month over and above your payment?
Yes. Yes.
And you say, I want this much to go on the principal, this is my payment, this goes directly on the principal.
Absolutely.
Some yes and some no, right?
Most places are yes on that. Yeah.
Some lenders won't.
Yeah.
Gotta be careful.
Yeah, now there's a method where people will split their payment, and they'll pay half, you know, at first of the month and half on the 15th or whatever it is. And what they're doing is they're reducing their principal amount, and it's a numbers game. Because you're reducing that principal 15 days early, they're charging interest on a lesser amount each month, and that helps too. That is something that they really limit though, when you're trying to split your payment like that, because your bill cycles, you'll end up with your payment not fully satisfied, even though you made your full payment, it doesn't code it right.
So, Brother Jeffrey, we're out of time.
Yeah, sorry.
Basically, the emphasis you're trying to drive home is the fact that additional payments on principal, how much it can reduce that amount of interest you
Yes.
pay and the length of your loan. home.
Yes.
So to summarize, if I understood you right, you said on a typical 30-year mortgage, if you could make one additional monthly payment toward principal
Per year.
annually, you could reduce the length of your mortgage by 5 years?
5 years.
Wow.
I'd also recommend, because rates are a little bit higher right now compared to where we've all lived in the last 10 to 15 years. If you could reduce your interest rate on your loan through a refinance by 2%, it's worth it. Even though you're having to pay some of your closing costs again, you're having to pay, different things like that. If you can reduce the rate by 2%, jump on it and refinance it.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to jump to Sister Wagner. Sister Wagner's going to talk about we lived it and we made it.
This has all been heavy stuff. Credit card debt, budgets, buying and selling and moving 10 times, and all this stuff Jeffrey just laid on us. It's bad. It's bad.
Thanks, brother.
But there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Praise God.
Steve and I both had good careers, and we had 401ks and all that good stuff, And when we decided to retire and go on Social Security, our financial guy told us, probably what we would make, and I'm going, I just looked at him, I said, are we gonna even be able to eat out once? He said, you'll be fine, Karen, you'll be fine, because everything is gone. And when we decided to move down here, we had a home, of course, and we had a big 40-foot camper on a seasonal site that we'd get away to every weekend and that. And so Steve said, I think we should keep that camper. Of course, we owed on the camper, and we owed on our house. And so I said, okay, so I sat down and did a little spreadsheet in Excel, and I said, did you win the lottery? And you're not telling me about it? Because we can't afford to keep that place up here and move down there and have a house. And first of all, I didn't want to drive back and forth. I said, no, we're not doing that. So we sold the house, we sold the camper, we sold his truck, we sold everything. The last couple of months, my mom lived with us, so I came down and bought this house here. And we moved her down so she could be comfortable, and my sister could watch after her until we went home and sold everything. Because, she had to eat at the table. Well, I sold the table after she was gone. Steve came home one day and he saw something going over their table, chairs going out the door, and he goes, what are we gonna eat on? I said, we got little tables, we got little outside tables we can have in the living room. So when we moved, we had, the TV was sitting against the wall on the floor, and we had lawn chairs we were sitting in and eating. But it was only temporary. It's like Brother Newman said, you can live below your means, So anyway, we sold everything, and we left there debt-free. We had no debt. We came down here, and we paid cash for the house we had, And our Social Security payments are more than enough with his retirement from Whirlpool, and I had a retirement from my company. And we used mine, we did cash payout when we bought the car, so we had no car payment, And it was just, it's comfortable, I can tell you. And I know that, the government, you never know when Social Security is gonna go away. But when it goes away, then we'll draw on our retirement and our funds. Yes, but my sister said, well, we draw from ours every month. I said, I'm not touching mine. And so they sent me a letter this year, since I turned the magic age, that I have to take the required minimum distribution. And I'm going, oh no. But I did, and it's fine. I took the taxes out and paid all that. But you can do it. But I know that when you're raising kids and you have, all this stuff, that it's hard. And it's like a dream. Well, it is. It's a dream. And retirement is fun, really. And we are blessed. And I know that we are blessed because we pay our money to God. He gets the first fruits, the very first fruits. Steve gets money, he lays it aside on the dresser. That's my time, for Sunday. So if you are faithful to God, He will be faithful to you. And you can have a nice retirement.
Sister Wagner, I'm so glad you waited till last.
I know.
Oh my goodness, wasn't that? Oh yeah.
That other stuff's so heavy.
I felt the same thing when you were talking about it. It's so heavy. Any questions, comments, statements, anything for Sister Wagner? Anybody to engage with?
I just wanted to add about real estate, how God works out things for people. We had a situation where a family member was moving down with a relative of ours that bought a home in our property. And then he decided he didn't want to live there no more, and the family member was planning on living and taking care of him in that home. So we told him, said, we're going to buy that home. So we paid cash for that home below the price that he paid for it. And so we knew that the homes in our area was nothing but going up. Even a modular, home, you could go in at 2015, 10, 5 years ago, even, and buy them homes for $20,000 and $30,000. But now you can't get one for $70,000 to $80,000, even $90,000 in our property. And these are usually anywhere from 12 to 1,600 square feet home. And we sold that home and tripled our money.
That's right, that's right.
And so we used that money, put money away, and then I used some of that money to buy me a truck.
Yes.
So I needed a bigger vehicle to buy this RV if you will. And so did I go and finance that? No. I used the profit we made on that home to pay cash for my truck.
And he bought
An older truck. He bought an older truck.
We did go out and buy
With
a
low
brand
mileage.
new-
You never smelt the glue evaporating?
No.
brand new diesel truck, but the diesel truck was ungodly high.
Yes.
So I bought an older truck that had real low miles on it, way below what a diesel truck normally has on it. And so I tell you, you can do it. Yep. But I think the best thing to do is never not pay your tithes. You pay your tithes, your God did. He will take care of you.
Yes.
If you put your hand to work, he'll bless it. And I tell you, if you do have some kind of something you're doing to make money, and you're paying your tithes and stuff, and you honestly give God the glory in it, he'll take it and he'll benefit you with it. He'll prosper you do. He said, I'll bless you in it. And he will.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Brother Wagner, I'd like to conclude on your comments, actually, before it gets too late. And just share with you a little bit about the motivation of why we're doing what we're doing. You know, in churches, public finance is one of the least things people want to talk about. People who do have money are afraid people who don't is going to ask them. So you're kind of a little bit reluctant to confess the fact that you're financially secure. But I honestly don't get that in our church. You know, I mean, it's happened in times past. I mean, I understand and I realize that. But most people get that reputation, and, you know, they burn the bridges pretty quick, and so that dries up pretty fast. But what happens is if we're afraid to talk about finance, we'll never draw from the strength of each other. So when I think about each one who presented tonight, and every one of them had a subject they spoke on, they were, if you will, breaking that glass ceiling to say it's okay to talk about these things among ourselves. There's nothing wrong with talking about it.
Amen.
And so now you're not isolated. You know, you're not at home trying to figure it out by yourself. How do I do this? How do I do that? Because honestly, take for example some things. You know, if I wanted to learn about long-term health care or long-term care insurance, I told Sister Becky, I'm like, she got some experience about that. Let me go talk to her. If I was a person who was trying to figure out how to get out from under this long-term mortgage, you know, this amortization schedule, I'd go, hey, Brother Jeffrey, tell me that again. How do we do that? You know, every one of these situations. You know, like investing, we had two people who talked about real estate tonight. And everyone here can do it. You know, you may not be able to go out and buy $300,000-$400,000 investment property, but you could get started somewhere, and then one day you'd be able to do that, right? So you got to start someplace. So the end goal is hopefully we can break down some walls and barriers of talking about how to be financially secure, how to help our families, because we're all in this together. And if you're going to get counsel, oh my God, get it inside the house of the Lord.
Amen.
Right? Get it inside. Brother Wagner speaking about the convictions, of giving God His and how He'll bless you. People who have those convictions that God has blessed their finances, those are the greatest people to ask questions from. So don't be afraid to talk about it. I think one of the things that caught a lot of attention was that this EverDollar budget that Sister Haley talked about. I heard people saying, what was the name of that again? What was the name of that? They want to download it. Go to Sister Haley and say, hey, how do you link your bank accounts to this thing so I can create my budget? And to that finance, she said she spent $1,000 on groceries. It's on restaurants. I'm sorry, on restaurants. That's on restaurants. She didn't help buy any of our groceries with that money. But all kidding aside, if Sister Linda Rory was here, she would kind of smack me around a little bit, because I confess the fact that one night I went grocery shopping without my wife and walked out with a $400 grocery bag.
What?
And it was in one buggy. I'm like, my God. It's easy to do.
Yeah, it is, because everything's
But
expensive.
if, when we're talking about this budget, it's a real eye-opener. Somebody was going to say something, Sister Wagner.
I can say that I did learn.
Take the mic.
I did learn. So, I did learn something from this. I once was broke, now I'm not. We have, at the end of the month or during the month or something, I see, I go in my bank and online and all that check. I see that there's money there, so let's just order something from Amazon, It's easy, it's fun. But when I went through that program, I once was broke, now I'm not. Now, as soon as we get our payments deposited, I take money and throw it in savings.
Yes.
Then it's not there to spend. Well, there's still some, but not to spend just because we have it. Oh, we've got the money, let's buy it,
And isn't that a great feeling?
Oh, yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I've told him, no more Amazon.
Oh.
He's coming along, but it's hard.
Install the EverDollar app and delete the Amazon app.
Well, I could do that. I could do that.
Somebody else. Well, the Wagner's like, I don't like this class. What is that? Can you take the mic?
I just wanted to mention something for, some of the folks. One of the things that impacted in the I was broke but now I'm not, it was talking about basically being able to leave money for your children and grandchildren. And that's kind of the goal, is not just to have enough for yourself, but so that you can impact generations as well. And I just wanted to mention, now that we've talked about, making all this money, saving all this money and things like that, how to do that. There's a lot of folks, and it would surprise you how many folks there are, they don't even have something as simple as a payable on death beneficiary on their accounts.
Oh,
their
yeah.
insurance, their checking account, their savings account, their IRA account. There are so many things that you can simply do. People overcomplicate it and they're like, well, I need a trust, or I need, a financial planner to help me when I die, and things like that. The majority of stuff can be transferred really easily without people having to pay to do that and go through probate. If you have real property, you can file a Ladybird estate or a Ladybird deed, and that goes to your children if you own property. If you have a manufactured home and there's a title, it can be titled through the DMV, where you can transfer that ownership. It could be titled as or and on things that are titled. Your investments have transfer on death options that are there, 401ks, all of those things. So I just wanted to put in a plug for that. If you don't know if that's on your account, call your bank, call wherever you have some sort of an asset, and ask how it's titled. That was just all I was going to mention. A lot of folks think that, well, I have a power of attorney, I have all this kind of stuff. When you're gone, a power of attorney doesn't do anything for you. It goes away. So just wanted to put in a plug for that.
Power of attorney dies just like you.
Your power of attorney dies with you. It does.
So, we could keep going. It's totally up to you. It's up to you. What a great house.
I was talking to my son and my daughter about that very thing, leaving my house to them. If I don't flip it, the guy offered me some money the other day. I might be selling it. I was talking to my son and daughter about that, about leaving my house, my truck, you know, and my daughter says, Dad, I don't want anything that I have to pay taxes on, I don't want anything that uses gasoline, and I don't want anything that eats. Give it to your church.
That's true.
I said, what? She said, give it to your church, that's your life, give it to your church. So, you might be getting out.
You know, it was prophesied we would. It was prophesied, yeah. Let's talk after church.
Sister Peggy was talking about real estate, mobile homes and stuff. I've been in the mobile home business all my life. And contrary to what Brother Jeffrey thinks, those dudes are built pretty good right now.
They are.
But anyway, I lived in one for 20 years, sold it, made $100,000 profit. In Homestead. That's without owning the lot. So I would say this, you can make money on mobile homes, but you better be careful when the lot rent's $700 a month.
That's
You're not gonna
right.
make any money.
That's the key.
So if you can buy property, a mobile home with land, you're not buying a mobile home, you're buying land.
Right.
Yeah. And, the title goes away if the mobile home. Yeah, and the title goes away, it actually becomes real estate. And there's money to be made.
Yep.
Matter of fact, if there's one that ever gets out of probate or wherever it's at over there, I'm gonna be buying another one. And if this guy's serious, I might be moving in that one. Sister Al's gonna have to start remodeling all over again.
So out of respect for everybody's time, let's take about 3 more minutes, right? And then let's hit a hard stop and we'll respect everybody. So anybody to close out with?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I see people struggle and scrimp and save and live like a hermit. And their children, for their children, to leave money for their children, but their children make 3 times, 5 times more money in their lifetime than you will ever make, if you ever make. And I said, so I understand saving and everything, but enjoy some of your money.
Yes.
I mean, if you gotta live with your means, you know how much money you got to live on. But I've seen it where people live like a hermit and they don't have to.
Nope. You hear all that rumbling? That's a good sign. So we're going to close out in prayer. I want to say thank you to everybody who come tonight. How many would give our panel a hand tonight? They did a great job. Great job. And I just want to say I appreciate each of your openness and honesty, being willing to open and talk about your personal lives. Invest in the saints that call namesake home. I would encourage those of you, if there's subjects of interest, follow up with them later, maybe among each other. And let's draw strength together, right? The Bible said there is safety in the multitude of counsel. And that's what we're attempting to do tonight. So if you would, let's bow our heads. We're going to pray.